Please rise in body and or spirit and open your hymnals to hymn number 188. Come, come, wherever you are.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Debbink. I'm going to be putting out the songs this morning. I just wanted to briefly introduce this song. It is sung as a round. We're going to sing it all together one time. We'll feel the words and the music and version of it. And then we'll divide it into our three sections here. And I'll kind of cue you in for each whenever you start. But it'll be, we'll get some numbers there. 1, 2, 3. That'll be us. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and you'll just be starting from the beginning when your number goes by. All right?
Welcome. As we begin, please turn off your electronic devices. I invite you to enjoy the chapel in the back of the sanctuary and no joys and concerns in the book there. If you have little ones, we have a nursery downstairs. We also broadcast the service on the closed circuit TV, which is located in the social hall near the nursery if you need to stay downstairs. After the service, I invite everyone downstairs to enjoy hospitality and the opportunity to greet one another. Finally, please note the announcements in your order of service with the many ways to be engaged in this vibrant community.
Good morning. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Actually, I guess I should say I'm the President of the Board of Trustees this year. So, welcome here this morning. Come, whoever you are. You are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin. You are welcome here. No matter who you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears. You are welcome here. If you come with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands, you are welcome.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Lori. Again, welcome. My name is Bryan Debbink. I serve this congregation as a congregant. I previously served the same role in congregations in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Appleton, Wisconsin. Because I come from other UU churches that, believe it or not, do things a little differently, shocking, I know, UUs, I've intentionally changed up a few things in today's service from our norms. So here are my pre-apologies for the service. 1, you may have noticed that I've used traditional Christian language at a few points in the order of service. That'll happen again later in the service as well. 2, at the end of the service will not feature a postlude. Instead, Rick will reprise the final hymn as we exit. Please, get up during the music and make your way downstairs for refreshments and conversation, or wherever the day takes you. Change is hard, but Rick has assured me that you'll be less offended by people getting up to go downstairs than sitting awkwardly at the end wondering whether to clap. Third, you'll be asked at several points in the homilies to actively engage with your neighbors, perhaps even speak into a mic. We embrace shared ministry here, so I think you should be okay with this one. Today's service, I promise, is about the sixth principle, which is the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. If you happen to have seen any of the Facebook propaganda this week, you may be thinking, wait, what? Isn't this about the environment? That's the seventh principle, the interconnected web of life. Well, it turns out there's this whole intersectional field called environmental justice. And it's been around for about 50 years. And they finally published a book this year, at least one that I've managed to read. And now I'm using that book to preach to you today. But actually, we're drawing on two sources. First is the book that I just alluded to, Justice on Earth, which is a collection of essays written by 14 UU spiritual and thought leaders. Totally coincidentally, it's also the UU Common Read for 2018-2019. That's actually a coincidence. I figured it out once I actually decided to use it. I don't have a hard copy to wave at you because it's just that fresh. So here's my phone. You can read it on your phone too. Not now. But an even more common UU read, possibly the most common UU read of all time, is our second source for today, Khalil Gibran's The Prophets. So you have that to look forward to, even if the rest of the service bombs. But in all seriousness, I intend for you to come away from this service inspired. And in doing so, I intend to challenge you and make you angry. As I say to my children, who are sitting in the front row, those are valid emotions. Take it a moment if you need to, but your reaction is entirely your choice. You can scream or hit or stamp your feet, or we can talk about it. Last week, I was fortunate enough to be cornered by Jan in order to do a responsive reading. The end of which said, quickly paraphrasing, I want to reduce life to its lowest terms, and if it proves mean, then get all the meanness and publish it to the world. If there's some meanness today, it's simply because it's life reduced. Again, I believe Rise in Body or in Spirit, and join with me in singing in number
155,
Circle Around for Me.
Invited Wesley, Debbink, and Izzy Overton to help me light our chalice.
Please join us in saying our chalice lighting word. We
Light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action.
Thank you, you may be seated.
Unless you are young and young at heart and would like to come forward to join me for our time for all ages. Come on up. No takers? Oh, come on, Marie. Excellent. So you may have heard Bryan mention that today we're going to talk about the sixth principle, which is the goal of world community with peace, justice, and peace, justice, and equality for all. I can't remember the exact word. Close. Well, I'm going to tell you a story. Sometimes when you look around the world, it seems like there's so much injustice and so much inequality that it's impossible to make a difference. But I'm going to tell you a story about somebody who made a difference. This, my friends, is Drippy McDropstuff Higgins McGee IV. Do you see him? He goes by Higgins for short. He is, what is he? Can you tell? He's a drop. Yes, he is a drop of water. That's why he's named Drippy McDropstuff Higgins McGee IV. Yes. So, Higgins lived in a valley that once was beautiful and lush and green. And he noticed that the plants weren't looking very good around him. They were looking very dry and droopy. The trees were looking droopy. Their branches were kind of hanging down. Some of the leaves were all dried out, but they weren't pretty colors like in the fall. They were just dried up pieces of green. And he thought, I really want to do something about this. I want to do something, but I'm just one little drop. How can one little drop do anything? But he thought about it and said, but I have a dream. I have a dream that this valley would be beautiful and green again. Maybe I can get some help. So he went around and he found some of his other friends who were drops of water. And they said, oh, Higgins, get your head out of the clouds. We can't do anything about that. We're just drops. We won't make a difference. So he went home a little dejected. And then on his way home, he saw an empty bucket on the side of the road. And you know, he made a big announcement. He posted it on Facebook and sent it to all of his friends. And he said, I'm going to jump in this bucket. I don't know if I can make a difference, but maybe I can. And maybe if you join me, we can do it together. So he jumped in the bucket. And he just sat there. Because he was just a drop in the bucket. But then, the next thing you know, his post started to go viral. And other drops started jumping in the bucket. And check it out. The bucket filled with drops. Because everyone thought, well, I'm just one drop, I can't do too much, but look at all those cool people in the bucket. With Drippy McDropstuff Higgins McGee IV. So, they jumped in the bucket with Higgins. And the next thing you know, there were buckets popping up all over the place. People were saying, follow Higgins, jump in a bucket. And so they did. And all of those buckets decided at the same time to tip over. They made the flowers come back to life and the leaves not be so droopy. The trees were happy and the valley was green once again. And all of this happened because one drop of water, Higgins, had a dream, and his dream came true. Because he knew that even though he was a drop in the bucket, enough drops in the bucket make a bucket full. And when there are enough buckets with the wind behind them, then justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. There. And please join me to go downstairs. Yeah!
Everywhere
as we enter this time of meditation, get comfortable in your chair. And imagine a place that gives you peace. Climb there, go there. Go there in your mind's eye. Absorb it with all the senses available to you. Listen. What do you hear? Breathe in. Smell and even taste the air. Reach around you. What do you feel? Touch. What does the ground beneath you feel like? Now settle into that moment and place of beauty. And a poet said, "Speak to us of beauty." And he answered, "Where shall you see beauty? And how shall you find her unless she herself be the way and your guide? And how shall you speak of her except she be the weaver of your speech? The aggrieved and the injured say, beauty is kind and gentle. Like a young mother half shy of her own glory, she walks among us. And the passionate say, nay, beauty is a thing of might and dread. Like the tempest, she shakes the earth beneath us and the sky above us. The tired and weary say, beauty is of soft whisperings. She speaks in our spirit. Her voice yields to our silences like a faint light that quivers in fear of shadow. But the restless say, we have heard her shouting among the mountains, and with her cries came the sounds of hoofs, and the beating of wings, and roaring of lions. At night the watchmen of the city say, beauty shall rise with the dawn from the east. And at noontime the toilers and wayfarers say, we have seen her leaning over the earth in the windows of the sunset. In winter, say the snowbound, she shall come with the spring leaping upon the hills. And in the summer heat, the reapers say, we have seen her dancing in the autumn leaves, and we saw a drift of snow in her hair. All these things you have said of beauty, yet in truth you spoke not of her, but of the needs unsatisfied. And beauty is not a need, but an ecstasy. It is not a mouth thirsting, nor an empty hand stretched forth, but rather a heart inflamed and a soul enchanted. It is not the image you would see, nor the song you would hear, but rather an image you see through you, though you close your eyes, and in song you hear, though you shut your ears. It is not the sap within the furrowed bark, nor the wing attached to cloth, but rather a garden forever in bloom, and a flock of angels forever in flight. People of oral phase, beauty is life, when life unveils her holy face. But you are life, and you are the veil. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in the mirror. But you are eternity, and you are the mirror.
Practice here at South Valley to split our worship service offerings with a charitable organization or program that aligns with our values and principles. For July and August, we will be donating to the Florence Project, a legal service organization that provides free services to detained adults and unaccompanied children facing immigration removal proceedings in Arizona. Since 1989, the Florence Project has addressed this inequity locally and nationally through direct services, partnerships with the community, and their children's program that educates, empowers, and provides legal assistance to more than 500 unaccompanied immigrant children. Will you join me in saying the words predictably in order of service for our offering? We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts.
Then said the teacher, "Speak to us of teaching." And he said, "No man can reveal to you aught of which already lies asleep in the dawning of your knowledge." The teacher who walks in the shadow of the temple among his followers gives not of his wisdom, but rather of his faith and loveliness. If he is indeed wise, he does not bid you enter the house of his wisdom, but rather lead you to the threshold of your own mind. The astronomer may speak to you of his understanding of space, but he cannot give you his understanding. The musician may sing to you of the rhythm which is in all space, but he cannot give you the ear that arrests the rhythm, nor the voice that echoes it. And he who is versed in the science of numbers can tell of the regions of weight and measures, but he cannot conduct you thither. For the vision of one man lends not its wings to another. And each of you stands alone in God's knowledge. So each of you, each one of you can be alone in his knowledge of God and in understanding of the earth.
So what is climate justice? At a summary level, it's the notion that climate change creates an unjust outcome. When we say that something is just, something is justified, the outcome more or less makes sense with the preceding events. For example, if I choose to park illegally real quick, and I get a ticket, there's justice of the law. When I smile and say good morning to a passerby, and they reciprocate in some similar manner, seems about right, just. If that same person took offense and punched me in the face, unjust, right? Probably. In another word, injustice. So when I drive my car, power my house with fossil fuels, fly on airplanes to exotic locales, or any number of other perfectly normal American things. And then a billion or two of my very conscious peers do the same, starting about 150 years ago. And all of those emissions are now raising temperatures, thereby raising sea levels, drying up water sources, acidifying the oceans, changing local climates, and affecting people who contribute little to create the problem, and devastating completely innocent ecosystems throughout the world. That's climate injustice. Climate justice is the work to, as much as possible, reduce and mitigate those unjust outcomes. Addressing this needs to start with 90% listening. And when you use your 10%, start with positive vision, positive motivation. So for the meditation, I borrowed an idea that I learned through my work with citizens climate lobbying. I had you imagine a place that brings you peace. For CCL, we use places in nature. Climate stories, we call it. I imagine for many of you, your place of peace was in nature. But for those who find peace in another place that's equally valuable, perhaps even more so valuable in this community that values shared ministry and diversity of thought. In that spirit, let's take a moment to appreciate that diversity of thought and share your places of peace with a neighbor, preferably someone you didn't come with today. I'll ring a chime to start, and then you'll have about a minute or so to talk. And if you're not talking, just listen. Practice it. Listen. And I'll ring the chime again, and you guys can change. Same deal. Sound good? So I'm glad to hear all those wonderful conversations, and we had a great one. Great listening, great talking. We'll come back and do another exercise like that in a little while. The way we talk about the motivations for addressing climate change are almost universally negative, right? That's because it's really bad. Sea levels rising, mass extinction, ecosystem collapses, tens of millions displaced, drought, hurricanes, floods, locusts, frogs, death to all firstborns, and so forth. It's really easy to talk about the bad stuff. But our Universalist forebears have much to teach us about this approach. I'm borrowing heavily here from the third or fourth chapter of a book by Reverend Dr. Adam Robersmith. In the mid-19th century, this is not quoting, it's just borrowing. In the mid-19th century, much of Christian preaching focused on hell and avoiding sin to avoid eternal damnation. Without going into the full origin story of Universalism, let's just say they fundamentally disagree with that. Hosea Ballou, perhaps the most prominent among early Universalist writers, had this to say. The preaching of future rewards and punishments for the purpose of inducing people to love God and moral virtue is not only useless, but pernicious. In other words, despite the earnestness and good intentions of those preaching, the existence of heaven and hell don't make people more virtuous, and perhaps even undermines their love of God. Lily makes this latter point by saying, if God and all God's gifts are so great and beloved, why do we need the conditional gift of salvation, and particularly fear of hellfire to honor his gifts and avoid sin? Similarly, today I wager most people in this room have a great respect for the earth and all the life it supports. And if all that is so great and has implicit worth not to sin against it, why must we too lead with lectures of a fiery future, even as earnest and well-intended as they may be? And like those fervent preachers in the 19th century that we would name demagogues, we fail to prevent sin by this method. Don't do it or a terrible future awaits! Many skeptical ears will dismiss these repeated lectures as misplaced environmental fervor, and worse, than lump all environmental action into the same bucket of zealotry. So what's the alternative? How can we possibly shape people awake to this current and growing crisis? Answer: you don't shape people awake. It's rude. And we've already talked about it. Offer them a positive vision of what's so important. Why are we saved? What are we saving and preserving? Why should they care about it? And then listen. What's in their head? Perhaps they come from a coal town. Perhaps they're concerned about the economy. Maybe they don't think we can make a difference in any case. Our sins are too great to be saved. Or simply don't like feeling blamed for some unspeakable crime. Honor that. That's real. No matter how those ideas were formed, that's their truth. Saber rattling be damned. As Reverend Robert Smith writes, a climate model's predictions will not make us love this world enough to save it. Predictions are necessary, but not sufficient, and will not open the heart. Citizens Climate Lobby embraces this positive and balanced approach. We directly lobby members of Congress, both sides of the aisle, though in Utah, just really one side of the aisle. And it's hard to describe to you how appreciative they are to be heard. Congressmen. We've softened hearts and changed minds, and we have data to back it up. The work isn't done, clearly, but the tide is turning. I'll leave CCL's work there, and we'll pick it up downstairs after the service. We could individually install solar panels, erect wind turbines, drive electric cars powered by said panels and turbines, practice sustainable nourishment, recycle all the things, and on. But it's not enough. Live your values, set an example, and sit back and let people take notice. Let's pause for a moment and realize that we're talking about justice. Not everyone can afford to do those things I just mentioned. In fact, few of us can. Individual actions won't change the trajectory that our planet is on. Only collective action can do that. As UUs, we work hard to do good works, but we shy away from bearing public witness to the very fate that motivates them. And it should be public witness. Getting UUs to claim a religious high ground on moral issues as UUs is daunting. Most of us, including myself, assume that no one has ever heard of Unitarian Universalism, so we don't claim it. Claim it. Proclaim it. Or no one ever will. Claim it in topical casual conversations, in letters to the editor, in conversations with your congressperson. Careful on that one, especially here in Utah. Reach out to other faith communities, build a moral coalition, amplify our prophetic vision. I know, and you know, we can't do this alone.
And the priestess spoke again and said, speak to us of reason and passion. Your reason and your passion are the rudder and the sails of your seafaring soul. If either your sails or your rudder is broken, you can but toss and drift, or else be held at a standstill in mid-seas. For reason, ruling alone is a force confining, and passion, unattended, is a flame that burns to its own destruction. Therefore, let your soul exalt your reason to the height of passion that it may sing. And let it direct your passion with reason, that your passion may live through its daily resurrection, and like the phoenix, rise above its own ashes. Among the hills, when you sit in the cool shade of the white poplars, sharing the peace and serenity of distant fields and meadows, then let your heart say in silence, God rests in reason. And when the storm comes, and the mighty wind shakes the forest, and the thunder and lightning proclaims the majesty of the sky, then let your heart say in awe, God moves in passion. And since you are a breath in God's sphere, and a leaf in God's forest, you too should rest in reason and move in passion.
Rest in reason, move in passion. I just love that. Sort of a compliment to how we talked about moving people with positive vision, with the heart. I promised something about intersectional environmental justice. We talked about climate justice, which is, even as a part of the larger frame of environmental justice, deserves its own name due to its prominent status. And despite environmental justice including it, from here on out, for simplicity, I'll consider climate justice and environmental justice as just highly intersectional terms. So environmental justice is a really huge scope of issues. From overt examples like the ravages of mountaintop removal and water contamination by industry, to more systemic injustices built into our political power systems, like where to build waste sites, and ignorant systemic disasters as in Flint, Michigan's water crisis, now in its 5th year of news cycle. To ignoring treaties and rights of indigenous peoples and using their land and water for industrial zones and nuclear testing. In all these cases, there is injustice when decisions of the privileged harm the poor. How do we begin to think about it all? Well, for one, you could read the book. Really, it's less than 200 pages, that's why I read it. Or we could talk about it a little more here. Perhaps the most important guidepost to set, one that is made throughout the collected essays of Justice on Earth. Always, always, always follow the lead of the affected communities. You may have wonderful, well-intended ideas, but when we come in on our horses to save the day, it'll cause more problems than it solves. Go back to the theme of listening first. Ask, how can we be of service? The affected communities know the history, the players, the nitty-gritty problems that need to be solved. We, as a relatively privileged group, can bring our time, energy, treasure, and yes, privilege to bear. Before you say, we're just a small congregation, how how can we possibly make a difference? Not that I would think that anybody would. Consider these two brief stories, each detailed by entire chapters in the book. 1. UU of Charleston, West Virginia, 121 members. In 2014, 10,000 gallons of coal cleaning agent poisoned the drinking water of 300,000 people across 9 mostly rural counties, shutting down schools, restaurants, and public life in general. UU of Charleston becomes a critical, central point of helping families in need, serves as a water distribution point, and organizes a coalition to address fears first and take action for clean water. In addition, UUC set up a donation fund, money from across the country to help mitigate the effects of the water crisis. And then, in 2016, while still working on those effects, devastating floods hit the water supply again. The infrastructure UUC had put in place was again called upon. Given their track record of collecting and effectively distributing funds, they continued and expanded their reach in the region, even being awarded grants by the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. The co-ministers at the time attributed their resilience and effective response to a number of things. 1. The congregation had an activist reputation in the community. 2. UUC was seen as a safe space for marginalized groups, serving as a meeting place for many such groups. Thus, those most affected by the water crisis felt comfortable with UUC. I'll also point out they did not have a large social justice team, but partnered with numerous outside groups. 3. UUC valued both spiritual and social justice activities of the church. Oftentimes, these are seen as being at odds with one another, but in fact they are synergistic and not everyone needs to do both. 4. I guess I'll take this one. Shared ministry. UUC very much valued their professional ministers, but also took pride in congregational ministry and leadership. This allowed them to quickly organize their response and collect donations. Think about UUC's position in this justice response. They were the affected community, and they ministered to additional affected communities. They served as a local expert for where tens of thousands of outside dollars should be spent, all while asking the surrounding communities, how can we be of service? Second example, Bellingham, Washington Unitarian Fellowship. 257 members, so bigger than us, but not huge. This story is shorter, but perhaps even more relevant to us, with Patty's established outreach to the indigenous people of Utah. Back in the mid-aughts, a congregant with experience in indigenous rights activism noticed that their town was more or less surrounded by native lands and peoples, but few people knew anything about them. To keep it brief, over the ensuing years, Bellingham Fellowship developed a trusted relationship with the local Lumi tribe. By focusing on respect and being of service. Soon, a couple of years later, a proposal surfaced by the SSA Marine Corps, which actually has operations here in Utah, to build North America's largest coal exporting facility, which would disrupt ancient burial grounds and destroy the Lumi fishing grounds, which are protected by treaty. Over the next 6 years, the Fellowship and the Lumi created a united front opposing the facility, which included other regional indigenous nations and congregations, and they won. In 2016, the permit application was denied by the Army Corps of Engineers on grounds that damage to the Lumi fishery could not be mitigated. It's a momentous win, and one that appears to be sticking since SSA has formally withdrawn plans. And again, they did it through collaboration, leading with love and standing up for environmental justice. Both these congregations rose up when necessary. They did it the right way, and despite their success, they both say they made mistakes along the way, and warned not to let fear of messing up cause paralysis. With that in mind, what opportunities do we have as a faith community? I'm new here, so I'm not going to tell you Again, turn to your neighbor. Maybe the same person. Maybe someone else. What environmental injustices can you envision our community engaging? How? Perhaps they're not at crisis level yet. Same rules as last time. So as we settle back in here, maybe we don't settle back in. I know probably the last time I did this, a lot of you guys were thinking, dang, I would really like to say what I'm saying in front of everybody. So this time we're going to give just 2 or 3 people an opportunity to do that. 2 or 3 people. We're going to keep this brief, folks. All right? Anybody want to share something from your conversations? Could you turn down the volume a bit? I got it.
So I guess this doesn't have a ton to do with the environment, but it kind of does. I was just thinking, because the western United States is basically on fire right now, with all these wildfires in California, the wildfires in Utah, everywhere. These first responders are working so hard to put out these fires. And I think it would be great to just help them, not necessarily by fighting the fires ourselves, but they could probably use food besides drying to blow extinguisher.
recyclable plastic that we need in our house, as little as possible. That I buy it, and I put it in a big bag and just start it, recycle it. And, that does help a little bit. It doesn't really help some. Most plastics are only recyclable a lot of times, so the key is to use as big as possible.
When I go to Cafe Rio or a place like that, there'll always be plastic forks and serve me in a plastic salad bowl. And I can't just encourage places of business to reuse, go to a hotel, the breakfast, they'll always be plastic. And every time I take the survey, I just say that, and I bring that to their attention. So I think if there's more public pressure on these restaurants, hire somebody to wash dishes. It's not that much out of the ballpark.
Anybody else? I said 2 or 3, that was 3, but okay. I'll offer one last one that I think maybe just jumps from directly what I was just talking about in the homily. Reverend Patty established connections with indigenous tribes, starting to create that community. That is a seed that's been planted here. I honestly don't know where that is at this point, but just like in Bellingham, Washington, they didn't know that there was going to be like this coal facility when they started that work of engagement and learning sharing between the tribes and the collective community. And I would love to see that not die as she exits. That is something that kind of immediately came to mind as I thought about this. I had a little more time to digest than all of you folks. But thank you guys, all of you guys, for sharing. One last point I'd like to make about environmental injustice. Sometimes it can arise from the best of intentions. Consider the effects of increasing renewables and electric power transport. Utah currently gets 75% of its electricity from coal. We absolutely can replace that for nearly identical cost, and it wouldn't take but a few years. But then we're replacing it with solar panels and batteries. And instead of digging up coal, which has a well-worn history of environmental injustice, we traded for equally reputable cobalt mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and future heavy metal disposal in whichever country is willing to take our waste. But you know, not in my backyard. That can't and doesn't sit well for us. However, since we enter engagements with eyes wide open, with minimal preconceived dogma directing our actions and responses, we as UUs can meet those challenges and more. Please rise in body and or spirit and sing with me hymn number 121, We'll Build the Land, and please remain risen at the end for the closing words.
Thank you.
be a sense of hope and optimism and justice. Knowing also that we are all human. You are human, I am human. And it is in all of our humanity that we will build this land of justice, rolling down like waters. Waters not rising up to swallow nations, and waters made clean and pure for all the life of this holy planet. And of course, as Natalie extinguishes the flame, let us not extinguish the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. Go in peace.